Okay, hi everyone. Fortunately, I couldn't be in class today. I'm in Washington, D.C. for work. And actually, it's been really nice here. The Kelly had a dream about this online class. It's been really nice here um, in the 70s, and I feel like maybe we would have done an online course anyway, since I hear the weather's really stormy and dark and cold in Dallas and DFW area. I haven't reviewed everyone's assignments. There were a few that were posted yesterday evening, um, but I'll look at the rest of them today. And I'm recording this class, and I'll upload it to YouTube later so you can view it. But let's get started. So if you want to follow along, it might be tough with one screen, but if you just want to watch and do your assignment later, you can do that as well. So let's see here. I'm going to sign out of our messaging system, so no one interrupts you. Okay, so I'm going to start a new project, new architectural template. Okay. Is anyone in class today in the architecture building? Yes, Diane, I'm speaking right now. She can't. Kayla, you can hear me, and Crystal, you can hear me, correct? What about the rest? Lisa, Maria can hear. Maria can hear. Okay, I don't know. It has to do with your computer if you're not able to hear me. You can also, eh, I know you're watching the screen because you clicked on the link, but if you go to the invite, excuse me, that I sent, it should have call-in information. So okay, so you can call in using that number. You should be able to see the screen. And if you do call in, make sure you mute yourself so that we don't hear ambient background sound while you're listening. Okay, I'm going to continue. So this is a template that we use. Okay, Diane called in. Great. This is a template that we use. But let me just you can just ignore this. So I'm going to delete all this stuff here because we don't need it. Okay, so before you guys drew a curtain wall, you drew a curtain wall, and you modified the mullions. Okay. You drew a wall of a certain length, and you modified the mullions, the profiles, the panels, the spacing, all that. You guys should be experts at that. But something else you can do, and it also is going to help you draw walls that are at an angle, is to do something like this. So we're going to create a generic model. Okay, let me see. Architecture, component, model in place, generic model. Okay, and let's create a blend tool. We'll create a blending shape. So I'm going to draw a rectangle like so. And then maybe I'll copy that shape, edit the top, paste that shape. Something like that. That's going to be, and we can change the height. That should be a generic model that is certain shapes like this. It has an angled wall. Excuse me. It has an angled wall like that. And excuse me for 1 second. I'm gonna go blow my nose. Okay, I'm back. So once you've made a shape like that, you can show you. This is a question that I get all the time. So when you draw a wall, you can only have it be sort of orthogonal, like that. And several students have asked me, how do I make my walls angled? So what you can do is create a generic model, and then go to the architecture tool, select wall, and then there's an option here that says pick face. And I think we briefly did this one of these days, but if you select that option, pick face, you can select on the surface of a generic model, and you can make a wall that is attached to that surface and it's at an angle. So if I briefly hide the generic model, we see there that we have a wall that is at an angle. And this wall, I don't think you can edit the profiles. You can't cut holes in it. But this wall, you can change it to be, a wall of a certain thickness. This right now is an exterior. This is one of our default walls, exterior brick wall on CMU. It could be interior, one layer chip both sides. So that's just a specific type of wall that we have. But the cool thing is that you can also do this with curtain walls. So we select wall, and we scroll down to curtain wall. We can select that curtain wall, click here, pick faces, and select that surface. Okay. It didn't let me. I wanted to test that out. Okay. So you can do it with curtain walls, but in order to attach it to a surface that's not orthogonal, you have to use something else called the curtain system, which is this one here. Curtain system by face. So, okay, you have a generic model there, and you select curtain system. And these are kind of different than the other curtain walls that you have. But right now, by default, I have these three, 5 by 10, 12 by 5, and 12 by 5 with quad corner. And these are default ones, and I'll show you what to do with them in a second. But once you select curtain system, you have several options here. One says select multiple. Here it's under the modify tab. Select multiple, clear selection, create system. So what you have to do is click on the face that you want to create that surface, and then select create system. Right now that doesn't look like much. But you can also do something like this, where you go curtain system, you select two faces. You can actually select all the faces that you want at the same time. I usually like to isolate it one by one. So curtain system, create system. Now I'm going to hide my generic model. And you have here the bones of the curtain wall, right? You have, if I make this thin lines, you have the panels, and you have grids. So I can place a mullion on that grid, on the edges. And I can also select this whole system. You see it doesn't, it's kind of, it's selected when it's dashed, and you select the dashed blue lines around the perimeter, but you can select the whole system, and you can edit type just like the other curtain walls. So edit type, I'm going to say duplicate, I'll say 2 feet by 5 feet, and then I'll change these distances. So I want that width to be 5 feet. I want the 5 feet. I want the other layout to be 2 feet. And then I can change the curtain, the mullions, like I could before. So let me select these. So I'm just giving everything. And I can also change the panel here, curtain panel, to another panel if I want. And if I say okay, it's going to change this curtain system to be angled like I want it to be. And again, I can select this curtain system and go to my properties palette, and I can tell it, you know, where do I want the spacing to begin. So maybe I want to center it. I can also rotate it, just like on the curtain system, my curtain wall before. It doesn't like some of the shapes. Huh, it didn't let me rotate it. That's interesting. Okay. I guess it doesn't like some of the shapes that I created. We could also, I don't know if you guys noticed, but let's see. This curtain wall system, this panel that's here is like a real piece of glass. So it has usually a glass on the building nowadays is two lights. So in other words, two pieces of glass, and this dimension is usually an inch. And then those sit in your mullions. But I think that double curtain wall, or that double piece of glass, didn't like the rotation. So what we can do is select the curtain system, select edit type, and change that from curtain panel double glazed vision curtain wall to let us select the solid panel. System panel 1.25 inch glass. Let's see. So that's just one piece of glass. Let's see if it lets us rotate that. No, it doesn't let us rotate that one either. Okay, that's fine. So that's just an angled shape there. I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to create another generic model, architecture, component, model in place, generic model. Okay. And I'll create a blend again. This time I'm going to do something like this. And then for the top, I'll do something like this. That's not very interesting. Okay. Let's cancel that. Because what I want to do is create a sort of a form that's rotating. But we can create these sort of guides for this, for the current system to attach to, also using the masking tool. So instead of doing architecture component generic model, we can go to masking insight. The masking insight tab. We can select in place mask, and it's going to give you a warning because usually it likes to keep masses hidden or turned off. So it's going to say that it's going to let us turn it on. And what I'm going to do is create a rectangle. And I'm going to copy this rectangle up. And I'm going to rotate this rectangle 45 degrees. I'm going to copy it up again. And rotate it another 45 degrees. Then I'm going to select all of these. And then I'm going to select create solid form. So it's creating sort of like a swoopy form there. Actually, let's get rid of this middle one. So that we just have this working in one direction. Oops. Select both. Solid form. That's not doing what I want it to do. Let's give this more height up here. Okay. That's okay. So if you want to create like a sinuous form like that, you can create several extrusions that are sort of lofted together. And then you can attach a curtain system to this. So let's go to architecture, curtain system, and we're going to select one of these faces. Okay. And select create system. Why doesn't it like those panels? Let's select the one that I created. So there the curtain system is attached. And you can start creating pretty cool forms that are attached to that shape. I was about to say this is pretty cool, to be honest. Yes, you can make some interesting shapes this way, but what I don't like is that the panel, I guess I could have made the shape bigger. Okay, we'll do that in a second. So let's do this in a different way. Let's create another massing object, massing tool. So massing in place. Okay. And let's say I create a rectangle. Let's say it's 40 feet long. Actually, let's say it's like this dimension. What is that? What is that dimension? Let's make it 10 feet. Okay, and I'm just going to select this and select create form. And I can start grabbing the edges of this thing like I showed you guys before, and I can start modifying them like that. I can also select this and mirror it here. So we have those forms sort of doing something like that. I can also create a form that's doing, I'm sorry guys about all the sniffling. I could also create a form that's maybe sinuous like this. Like if I draw an arc, delete this line, and I select these 4 lines and I create a form. And again, I can modify this to a shape that I think is interesting. Kind of. So then, if I hit Finish Mass, and I want to apply a curtain system to this, go to Architecture, Curtain System, and I can select all of these faces. Let's say I want to make a wall that's sort of bending backwards and doing something like that. I'm going to select the 2x5 curtain system that I created here in my Properties palette, and I'll select Create System. It's giving me a warning that it doesn't like something. You can just hit Replace Panels. Now, I guess my shapes are really small because the curtain panel is 2 feet. What you can do is make these taller. And then select that curtain system and select Update to Face. And it should follow the faces that you've updated. So this one, if this one goes this way, no, it didn't like that. And this one doesn't really have an up arrow because I modified the top, so it's kind of warped. Let me delete these and do another one. So there was a question here. Would glass have to be curved? Sorry. No, the glass because Revit wants it to be as realistic as possible, and although you could curve glass in real life, it's really expensive, um, and so everything is usually segmented straight pieces. If you want to create a curved piece of glass, what you could do is create that generic model or masking tool, create a wall, like one of these walls over here, and then edit this type, and then you change this material to however thick you want the glass to be, like an inch thick, and then you would change the material to be glass. That way it would read as glass. But you're creating your own glass wall. It's not part of the curtain system. The curtain system won't let you. Everything is going to be in straight segments for ease of constructability, since that's the way most things are built. So let's do another massing tool. Massing, in place mass, okay. And remember I said never use the spline tool because it gets kind of annoying to modify. I'm going to do something like this. Okay, and I have to finish. I think actually I can just select the line and select create form, and it'll create an extrusion. But then I have less points to play with. So what I'm going to do is close it off so I can select the points. And modify them. So I'm going to select this. Actually, let's not get complicated first. What I wanted, let's do this. Let's draw this shape, a rectangle, maybe 20 by 40 feet. We have a lot of fun creating these shapes. So let's go step by step so you guys get the basics. Okay, so I have a shape here that's 20 by 40. I'm going to draw an arc on this side of this rectangle. Okay. Then I'm going to select these lines. I'm going to go into an elevation view, and I'm going to type in MV, and I'm going to hold Control and Shift to copy this up. That's the quickest way I found to copy something up. MV for move. So you could click on the move tool and then hold Control Shift. So you have to select the object first, hit the move tool. So you have to unconstrain it here. I don't know, just see if we can do it without typing letters in. Select that, move tool, copy. I guess you select copy, unconstrained. Oh, that's not as hard as I remember it being. You guys saw that? I selected that, hit the copy tool, uncheck the constraint because the constraint is keeping it on that reference plane. And you can copy it up. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to switch the way that this arc is moving. So I'm going to select this arc only, and to select just that arc, I hover over that arc and hit Tab. Okay. I'm going to go into an elevation view, and I'm going to say mirror. I'm going to click the mirror tool. I don't want it to copy, so I'm unchecking the copy. Okay. So now I have a concave surface, or a concave line here and a convex there. I'm going to select both of those, select create form, so it'll create a lofted surface there. It looks kind of flat right now because there's nothing on that surface. But when we hit finish mass, if we attach a curtain system to that, to this face, create system, it's going to think a while. Okay, it's giving me a warning about a panel that doesn't want to be created. button and we hide our masking tool, now we have this kind of really cool, sinuous kind of curving system. And if we zoom in, we see that all the members are straight members, and the panels, of course, are also. I can't make a mask. Make sure that when you're making a mask, that go to VV and go to Mask Tool and make sure it's checked on. Okay? And also, when you go to the masking and sites, make sure that you have, if you click on this, that you have Show Mask Form and Floors. So that'll show the masks that you're working on. It may be defaulted to not show up. Let me know if that works, Rebecca. So we can create some pretty interesting shapes that way. So far we've been, no, that's not the problem. So to create the mask, you have to make sure that the lines are closed loops. And you also have to, once you create the profile, you have to select it and the one above it, and then select Create Solid Form. And as you saw right now, I just selected the bottom profile, selected Create Form, Solid Form, and it created an extrusion like that. And then you can, if you want, just edit this extrusion using the handles on the axes, and you can start modifying the shape that way. Rebecca, if you want to send me a screenshot through email, I could help you better figure out. So for making that curtain wall out of the mask, would you just delete the rest of the mask and only use the curtain wall? That's a good question. So I would hide it so that you can come back and edit it afterward if something's not working. I wouldn't delete it unless it's like a really simple shape, just like a rectangle or something that you can quantify easily or dimension easily, so you know that a certain wall is like 45 degrees from this point, and you rotate the wall 45 degrees, and you know that it'll always be that way. Then you could delete it because you could easily create a new one if you needed to make it longer or taller or whatever. But typically because the point of making the mask was to be able to make a streamless shaped curtain wall. Correct. Yes, the mask is just to attach the curtain wall to it. So one of our projects in the office, let's see. So this is a project that will start construction pretty soon in Reno, Nevada. And the way that we modeled this, you can see back here an angled piece of glass, and that is a skylight, more or less, that brings light down into a multi-level concourse and the opening there inside the building. And so that angle is created by attaching this curtain wall. It's created by attaching a mask, a curtain system to a mask or a generic model. I don't remember which one we used. And then we just had it hidden in every view so you didn't see it by placing it on something called a work set, which you guys haven't. I'll show you one day what that means, but it's kind of like putting it on a layer that is hidden. We put it on the hide work set so that we don't see it anywhere. And then if we need to modify it, again, like this thing got modified a couple times. It got longer, taller, shallower, steeper, for whatever reason came up. And that's what we did there. And then if you also look at, let's see, those are older projects. I talked about that project before. If you also look at this canopy here, it sort of tapers when it gets close to the end. And the way that we attached the metal panels, or we made the panels sort of do that tapering and all that, was to create a mass that was shaped that way, and then we attached curtain systems to that mass. And the curtain system, instead of having a glass panel, we made it have a metal panel. You guys know how to make panels with materials. And then instead of having a mullion, we made it have the sort of reveal piece that goes in between the panels. And so that's how we created the curtain system there. Can't think of a better example. Let me show you. Can't think of a better example. But so if you delete it, just make sure that you're never going to modify that shape again. Okay. Another thing. So we've been working in like creating extrusions from top to vertically, but you can also create extrusions like horizontally. And if you want to do that, I would go to, first of all, go to your massing and site, in place mass, okay, select OK. And then we want to set the work plane. We want to set the work plane to be not on the ground plane. So if I hit show here on your work plane, we see this big blue plane appears, and that's just showing us, okay, this is the work plane that you're basing off everything. You're basing everything off. So again, if I draw a rectangle, it's drawing it on that work plane, right? And if I want to create a new one, I'm going to select set. And this one's a little bit tricky. If we had usually what you have to do is base it on an element that's already there. So I may have to draw a wall that I'll later delete, but that's just showing, that's just so that I can place my work plane on that. So again, massing aside, in place mass, okay, set, and I'm going to select the surface here. Okay, now if I select show, that's showing where my work plane will be. So if I draw a rectangle, what do I want to draw? Yeah, it's pretty boring, but using the move and the copy tool like we did earlier, we can copy, so move, copy, unconstrained. So move it 20 feet. So now we copy that over. Let's say I want to move this corner. So let's say I want this thing to do something like this. And then I'm going to move this one 40 feet. Move, copy, unconstrained. That was 20, 40. And then if I select these three curtain or these profiles and select solid form, then I'm creating a swoopy shape there. I can hide this wall so it doesn't appear. An email from Rebecca. Yes. Okay, we'll answer that in a second. So again, I can go architecture, curtain system, select that face here. And that's not that interesting. I can go back into this thing, select the whole mass, select X-ray so that I see the original points that I created, and then I can modify those points. Let me do something interesting. Well, I guess I can only select, I should only select one at a time. instead of selecting a plan. Okay. So now this is kind of doing a more interesting shape, architecture, curtain system, create. It might give me a warning because it doesn't like the curve. The panels that are going to be sort of cut at a curve. Replace panels. Now again, we have a shape that's unique. Okay. Another thing that we could do, and which we did in the office, is for this project, which you guys have seen. I'll show you the private. I'll show you the top secret pictures that no one has ever seen. Let's see. Set up for brain health, zombie headquarters. Well, I hope it doesn't come to that. There it goes on it. Okay, let me look one more. Photography people. You can see we have a lot of projects. Huh, I can't find it. You can see that one. Okay, we'll have to wait another time. That was really bugging me. Aha, you guys are lucky. So this is that project. These are professional photographs from an amazing photographer in New York. But this ceiling that you see here is kind of bowing. And I don't know if you can see it from the outside. This is another great picture. You can see how the ceiling is bowing. And I created that shape using the tools that I'm showing you right now. And we attached a curtain system that was that had these slats on it so that it would follow the shape of that ceiling. But that's another way that sometimes you have to create like a different shape that's not just orthogonal or an extrusion, and you can trade it that way. So this is a rendering, but you can see the shape of the ceiling sort of bowing that way. So it doesn't always. I'm showing you these tools, but you can actually use the curtain system to do a lot of things, not just curtain walls. You can make panels, interior panels. So again, on that VA Reno project, find that. Um, So this is a rendering of that VA Reno project, and you can see we also have some skylights back here behind the building that were sort of shaped like that, where we attached the mast to. More images. This is underneath the canopy, and we made the panel be metal panel, and we could alternate between having them open or closed. And so some of these, you see the panel there, which is pretty large. I think it's 2 by 5. And then in some locations we're going to have these light fixtures, and in other locations it's going to be open to the sky. But we did that all with the curtain system. I'm trying to find an interior view. Oh yeah. So this is the interior of that lobby, and we have on the back, as you enter, we have this sort of panel system that's going to be glass, metal panel, and the glass is also going to have different textures. It's going to have one is going to be glossy, one is going to be satin, so it'll have a different sheen on it when you walk through. But this is all also created with a curtain system, and we just change the panel spacing and change each panels to get them to what we wanted it to be. So that's another way that you can use it. Here's an elevator bank, and that elevator bank is have different panels. Again, they're going to be different metal panels. You see that system back there. Yeah. Okay. So those are some ways you can use that. Now, let me see if I can answer Rebecca's question. How do I attach 2 faces? Okay. So Rebecca, they shouldn't be. You have to select both of those, drag your window over both of those profiles, and then select. Once you've done that, you select Create Form, which will appear somewhere around there. Copy, unselect the constraint. So you sent me something that looked like this, but the front side of that is wavy. So then you have to drag your mouse over both profiles. So you have it all selected. And then you go to the Modify tab, Create Form, and select Solid Form. And then you can create your form that way, and then you can attach curtain system to one of these surfaces. Okay. Now let's do something a little bit more complicated. This is kind of similar to what you guys have been doing. So now what I want to do is, you're welcome, Rebecca. So now what you have to do is, let's create a curtain system. Sorry, let's create a mask again. Masking in place mask. Okay. Create an extrusion. And okay, what we're going to do now is create something similar. Create a curtain system that has a irregular shape, but this is going to be more practical. Let me see. Maybe we shouldn't do it this way. Let's actually start a different way, and then I'll show you a second way of doing it, so that we don't get confused. So let's go to the R, New, And instead of going to family, which is where we always go to, let's go to conceptual mass. And then there's only one option. Okay. Oops. I clicked on something. Let's try it again. Architecture, new, conceptual mass, select mass, select open. And it gives us this weird environment which we haven't seen yet, which is kind of it's kind of like a family, but it's different. You see it kind of flips there when I go from bottom to top horizon. But this is an environment, again, to create sort of more custom or irregular shapes. And it kind of works similarly to the mask that we created inside the project. But let's just explore a little bit what we can do. So let's create just a simple extrusion. I'm going to go to the Modify tab, Rectangle, and this is where it's tricky. You see how it's highlighting that plane? Now, any shape that I draw, I didn't select it or anything, but any shape that I draw is going to be drawn on that plane. So I kind of have to make sure that I have the right plane selected. I want this plane. So what I did was I selected the rectangle tool. I selected set work plane, and I hovered over these two lines here just to make sure that I'm drawing on the bottom work plane. And you have to be careful because this is really solid. I'm just drawing what looks like a small box, but it's actually 64 by 92 feet. So, let's say it's something like this, and I can move this along that plane. And the same way that I created the mass in the generic model, in the project, I can select those profiles, select solid form, create solid form, and I get a mass. And I can select those edges. I can modify them. And they start to become, you see how they become kind of deformed, kind of warped surfaces. I don't know, looks kind of cool to me. Kind of like, I don't know what that looks like, but that's fine. And while you can't, excuse me, in this environment, you can't create a curtain system. But what you can do is load this into your project. So let's save this first file, save as, family. I think I have a family folder from the other day. I have a ton of files on my desktop. So I'll call this mass 1 for now. I'm going to load this into my project. I'm not going to select load into project and close. I'm just going to select load into project. Okay, brought me to that window. Let me go back to my 3D view. If I go to architecture components, it'll appear there. It's bringing it in. It's quite large. And now I have a mass that I can attach a curtain system to. So if I go to architecture, curtain system, and I can create a system, and it's based on the mass that I brought in from that other environment. This is kind of cool how it's warping it in that way. That's just because of the shape of the mass. It has a perspectival quality. Let's go back to our mass. So that basically we just created something. We could have created that in our project, but one thing, like I was explaining maybe when you were starting with families, that if you have a lot of native things in your project environment, it'll make your model heavier. So sometimes it's good to create a generic model or a family outside and then insert it into your project as sort of like a link, just like we created those profiles that attach themselves to the walls. when you had that, we had to create those 3 different wall thicknesses and the profiles from that CAD drawing. It's sort of easier to, it might be easier in some occasions to create your mask and in an outside environment and insert it in. So another benefit is that I can modify this shape. Okay, I'm going to save it and I'm going to load it into my project. It's going to ask me, do you want to overwrite the existing version as parameters? Yes. So now that is going to change shape. And that's the one we had before. Oh, let me show you something. Okay, current system. So we had that current system attached to the surface before. Okay. And now if I, whoops. Now if I insert this mask again that I've modified, it's going to change the shape of the mask. But like I showed you before, you can select that current system and select update to face, and it should change it to the new form that you have there. Okay. Now let's simplify this. Let's create a different shape now. So delete this. And I'm going to create an extrusion that goes sort of horizontally instead of from the ground up. So I'm going to select that rectangle. I'll select set, and I'll set this vertical plane to be my work plane. So I'm going to draw a rectangle. Remember, you have to be careful not to make it too big. It's kind of deceiving. And I'm going to bring this down to there. And I'm going to copy, how tall is this wall, or this thing? 6 feet. Make this 10 feet. I'm going to copy this over 3 times. Okay. Copy, constraint. I'm going to copy it. Like if I select multiple, I can click several times without having to click again. So I'll do one at 10. I wanted to do it at 10 feet. Let's try it again. Uncheck constraint. 10. 10'6". It's okay. Again, I hit the unconstrained button. Okay. And I can select different points of this thing and modify it. Okay, and then I can select all 4 of these lines and select create solid form. And now you see that that wall is kind of doing that shape. And I'm just drawing a rectangle, but an extrusion. But like I showed you before, it could be that you just draw, a plane like a line that way, and then you copy it over. And you modify this plane. You have to draw it. Change the shape. Let me change the shape of this one. You could just select 2 profiles and sweep the form of them. Ah, okay, so now we see that, oh, we didn't copy it out of plane. It was in the same plane. Okay, now if I change the shape of this one, and I sweep these 2, these are in different planes now. It'll blends between those, but it doesn't have to be solid. So you could attach a curtain system to that thing, but it doesn't have to be solid. Okay. Now what I wanted to show you is that if you go to, if you select the surface here, let's just select this surface. First of all, let's save this as that mass 2. Save as family mass 2. And we select just this face here. You see how this, I just hovered over an edge and I hit tab until I selected that face. If you select that face and then go here to your modify tab and select divide surface, it's going to create sort of this grid. But the cool thing is that you can then, in your properties palette, you see that right now it says no pattern. But if you go to your properties palette, you see that there are lots of default patterns that you can choose from. So let's say I select rhomboid. It's going to create this sort of diagonal grid. There's also an octagon rotate. There's also arrows. Okay. And so these are kind of the almost like curtain grids when we showed you when we talked about that before. You can select them. You can change their density. So right now they're 12 by 12. You can make them 15 by 15, and it's going to make them smaller. Or if you made them 2 by 2, it just made like a huge one. But that's just the grid background that you create. And what we want to do is create the actual panel that's going to go on the inside. So let me select those arrows. I'll go back to a more simple one like the rhomboid. Okay. And the cool thing is that we can select this mass and we can still modify it. And the rhomboid shapes is kind of the rhomboid shape is being modified. Okay, so we say this is mass 2. Now we have to open another family to make a panel that'll fit inside of this rhomboid here. So let's go to the application menu, new. Now here we have to go to family. And here we will select curtain panel pattern based. Okay, curtain panel pattern based. Select open. And here again, we're in a different environment. This is not a generic model environment, and it's not a massing environment. It's solely for making these curtain panels. And you see these lines here. They're actually representing the 3 axes of each of these nodes. So the X, Y, and Z axes, planes. But this is a square, and we want to create a rhomboid panel, rhomboid shaped panel. So what we're going to do is select this grid here, okay? And then we're going to go in the properties palette, we're going to change it from rectangle to rhomboid. Again, those options are appearing. And now we have this diagonal grid. And there's a really simple way of creating a panel. All you have to do is hover over these grids here and select create solid form. And it's going to ask you, do you want to create a plane or an extrusion? I'm going to select extrusion. And it's creating this extrusion, and we know in the properties palette here that the extrusion is 8 feet tall. I only want this to be like 2 inches or something. So I can modify that to be 2 inches. Now let's go to the file, same as, family. I'm going to call this what it was, curtain panel pattern based, 01. Just to distinguish it from the mass. Curtain panel pattern based. Okay, and then I'm going to load this into the mass. Okay, I think someone has their, I have to head to my second class, so I switched to phone. Okay, let me mute all. Okay, okay, can you guys still hear me? Okay, so once we've created this panel, we're going to load this into the mass, into the conceptual mass, okay? Load into project, it's going to ask you where I want to place it. I want to place it in the mass, okay? Now if you select the surface, where we have that rhomboid, and we go to the properties palette, we'll see that under the rhomboid pattern, we have our panel that we created, CPPB01. And if we click on that, it'll replace that surface with these panels. Look at that. Doesn't that look cool? I think it looks cool. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. So now what we can do, thank you, Kaylee, we can save this, mass 2, and now we can load this into our real project, project 1. And look at this craziness here. What's going on? Let's click anywhere and see what the deal is. Okay, it wasn't as crazy as it was looking. But now we have this panel, and if we had masses, you see how the mass sort of comes attached to this panel system here. So what you can do is go to VV, go to mass, make sure it's unchecked. And it is unchecked, but remember there's an override here that you can select it. You can select show mass in forms or show mass by view settings. So if we select show mass by view settings, it'll go to our VV setting, which says that there's no mass available. And so there we have the beginning of, we're hiding that mass. You can't really select it before, like when you have these, where'd it go? You can't really select the mass and delete and hide it, I don't think. But there you can start. Okay, a few more things and then we can finish. I think we're gonna go slightly over the limit, but I think you guys will like this. So let's go back to our original panel, which is this one. And what I want to do is I want to modify one of these corners. Okay, I want to move that panel. You see that? I selected this panel and it had a lock on it, so it only was letting me create an extrusion up or down. But if I select the panel and unlock it, this gets confusing with the things, with hitting tab. But if I unlock it and I select, like, let's say this corner, and I start to warp this panel, so it's kind of a shape like that. I'm going to save this. I'm going to load this into my mass. Override, select the bottom one. Now this might get kind of crazy here. You didn't like that one. I know why. Because I unpinned the whole thing. I unpinned the whole panel. When all I wanted to do, so it was coming in, but it wasn't being constrained by any of these nodes. But what I want to do is just select the top surface so that I can modify the top surface, and I still want the bottom to maintain attached to the outlines there. So let's try it again. Okay. save, load it into project, into mass, overwrite the existing version as parameters. Huh. Now that is unexpected. See if we select one panel, what it looks like. It doesn't like that. I wanted to create an interesting shape and it's not letting me. Start from scratch. Okay, panel. Okay, solid form. That shape. Okay. For some reason. Okay. I think I know why. Since I'm unconstraining the top part of this, and this has a certain dimension, this right now it says 2 feet, and this says this is like 15 feet. The bottom is still being constrained to the parameters, but then this thing is staying at its original size, and so the bottom is staying tied down with the lock, right? But this top one, and so if the grid changes shape, the bottom will follow that. But since I'm unconstraining the top one, if the grid gets smaller, this top one is still going to stay always the same size. And so what you saw there, I don't know if you saw when I selected that there was like a tiny, so it's doing something like this where the top will always stay the dimension that this is, but the bottom is just sticking to that parameter. So that's annoying. Let's see how we could get around that. Okay, no, maybe we won't deal with that, but I do want to show you something else, that if you create a solid form, okay, and then we could create, I only want to make this 2 inches. We can create a void inside of this thing. I want to set the plane to be the bottom. So I want the plane to be level 1. Okay, so I can draw a circle, something like that, and then extrude a void form. So I'm cutting a hole through this thing. If I load that into my project, into my mass, let's see if it likes that. It didn't like that either. And you know why? Because, okay, this is a good learning tool, good learning moment. Because the rhomboid panel is like this. And the circle, we just drew it inside of that panel without any constraints. So the circle is actually this big. And since it's not constrained to anything, it's just cutting indiscriminately. So what we have to do is we'd have to go in and this is kind of annoying, but the results will be cool. So let's put a level 1. What we have to do is sort of create let's put a wireframe view so we can see what the center line of this thing is. Is to create a circle and maybe tie it to the center. And we'll say equal in that direction, equal in this direction. So we know that it'll always be centered. And then we'll give this a radial dimension. says 1'6", but that looked like it was too big before. So maybe we just give it like 2-inch radial dimension. Now let's load this into our project. Oh, there's a circle, but we didn't create a void. But you see how it's centered now and it's fitting within the parameter, within the panel. Actually, you want to create that circle. Select the void form. What does that look like? Is it cutting a hole through it? So select void form. Okay, create a solid form. And then change it to a void form. Cut through the panel. Okay, maybe that'll work. Okay, Rebecca, you can go ahead. So now it's cutting that hole through the center, and it's more proportion to the panel. So that's a little complicated. I would just create a panel if you want to use this system. You can also just use current systems for your assignment. You don't have to go through all this. You could also, if you delete that panel and you select the lines, no, let's stop there. Let's stop there. But the other thing I was going to show you is briefly this, that if you're in your project, if you're your project environment and you have an installation or something, and you know that, let's say you have a room that's like, I don't know, 30 by 80, something like that. And maybe you have a wall maybe you have 2 walls or something, and you're designing a gallery, and you know that your installation has to go, the limits that it has, or maybe something like this. So what you can do is create a mask in this environment that sticks to whatever dimensions, or maybe, the installation, has to be bracketed between 2 walls like this. And so you can create a mask. Let me just show you briefly. Okay. Let's say I make it goofy. Okay. I create a solid form. And I know more or less that I want my parameters for this thing are something like this. Oh, that didn't work. So I know like my generic mass has to be, or whatever my installation is, has to be like that. So what you can do is isolate this, okay? And it's based on your parameters in your project. But if you isolate this, hide it, isolate, and then you export this, export, select CAD formats, that's fine. And when you go to CAD formats, select ACIS SAT. Select next. And I'm going to call this like installation mass. And it's asking me, are you sure you just want to export what you have isolated? And I want to say, yes, leave the temporary hide isolated mode on and export. Okay, so we just exported that. Now let's go to our conceptual mass environment, which is this one. Let's delete this thing. And let's import that ACIS FAT file. So file, insert, import CAD. We have to change this to ACIS, installation mass, open. And now we have our mass here. And we can start, we can select the surface and we can divide the surface. Let me see here. Actually, what I want to do is explode this thing. Not letting me explode it. Okay, never mind. You should be able to bring in the mass from here and be able to modify it so that you can select the surface and then divide the surface like we did before. But it's not letting me. So never mind. I'll have to figure that out and get back to you next class period. Okay, so let's go over your assignment, which should be posted on Blackboard. And I'll just open it here. So this is kind of similar to the previous assignment. It's just has a different little, you have to create it using the current systems. But your assignment is to create a sinuous screen wall, 10 foot tall by 40 feet long. And it could be curvilinear, or it could be faceted, so it could be made of triangular elements. And we went through a lot of examples. You can just use the current systems that you're more familiar with, because they're similar to the curtain walls, and you can create your own curtain walls and your own panels and profiles if you want to edit them. If you create your own panels, you can change your density. So this is, you can create these panels to be different sizes. So this is a project by Agency Architecture. They were visiting, Stephen from Agency Architecture was a visiting professor last semester that I co-taught a studio with. But they made this wall, just like an installation that has different varieties of lighting and different sizes of openings. And so you could take a selfie and sort of have the background be whatever color you wanted it to be to get the light that you wanted on your face, or that was better for your skin, or whatever. It also had another component to it that was kind of interesting that you guys can read. I have different links giving you different references that you can. So this is that selfie wall project, and I just want you guys to vary the size of the panels. It doesn't necessarily. This is a really famous one by Office Da, which is now Keys Nada. That's the name of the office. But I'll just show you this last example, and then you can. So this was an installation he did at, I think it was in Georgia. Oh, it was in Boston. So here I think it was in Georgia at some point as well. But it's a beautiful wall. And these panels are really complicated, so they're not, these are just meant to serve as inspiration, different shapes that you can create. You don't have to go into like this crazy amount of detail with the bolts and all that. So there's a few other examples that you can look at. one of this Natalia Egan is is a colleague of mine, and we worked on this project together when we were in grad school, several of us. Again, they're just meant to serve as inspiration. And there's a few other ones. Okay, so I'll upload this to YouTube and send out a link later this evening. Email me if you have any questions, and I'll see you guys in class on Tuesday. Thank you.